We're continuing on with 1 Samuel's story, of course. And before we get into that, I would like to tell you about a queen. And we don't know her name because I don't think her name is really revealed. But we typically know her as the evil queen from Snow White. And if you know that story, and I hope you know that story because, well, it's a famous story. But in the story of Snow White, she has a stepmother. And of course, Snow White is a princess, and therefore her mother is a queen, and her father is the king of the kingdom. And in this story, Snow White and her stepmother, who is the evil queen, her stepmother is beautiful, beyond compare. And she wields the power, she's the monarch of the nation. And every day she looks at the mirror on the wall and she would ask, mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? And every morning the mirror would respond to her, of course you are the fairest of them all. And that gave her great delight because her ego was based upon, her self-esteem was based upon her outside appearance and how beautiful she looked. And as the story progresses, her stepdaughter, Snow White, she becomes older and she becomes maturer and more mature. And then in that place, she is becoming fairer and fairer by the day. And one day, the queen asks, mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? And this one fateful morning, the mirror answers, Snow White is the fairest of them all. From that moment on, in her heart, the evil that she had was triggered. And the lid was cracked open, and her hatred for Snow White began to grow and grow and grow. Until one day she decides to kill Snow White by hiring an assassin, huntsman, we don't know his name either. But that assassination attempt has failed because Huntsman had taken pity upon her, and Snow White wanders into the forest, and she is rescued, and she lives with the 7 dwarfs. But one day, the queen finds out that Snow White is indeed alive, and to do the job right, she decides that she must do it herself. So she disguises or transforms herself into, depending on which version of the story you read, into an ugly witch, an ugly old woman. And here in this story, at this point of the story, we realize that what was inside of the evil queen has now become the outside of the evil queen. Her ugliness that was inside of her is now expressing itself onto the outside. And now we really see what her heart looks like. Before we couldn't, because she was disguised, her beauty disguised her ugliness inside. The irony of this story is that her disguise as an old witch is an actual expression of what she looks like in the inside. So Snow White, in some way, is a story of a person who reveals what they're truly like in the inside. And this story has a happy ending where Snow White gets to live, etc., etc. But the story of Saul has a similar tragic ending. And of course, God turns it into a quote-unquote happy ending with King David. But Saul's story is similar in that Saul's success and Saul's exterior, his outside of his physical size and height and the fact that he is king has really disguised and masked who he was on the inside. This story is a story that reminds us that God does not look on the outside, but he looks on the inside. And God revealed what Saul is truly like, or Saul reveals himself when he experienced the great amount of success as being appointed as a king, And then he once again reveals himself what he is truly like on the inside when he experiences a trial. Because Saul measures himself, measures the self-worth by success of his career. He measures the worth of himself by looking at how other people perceive him. He became a person who is caught up in living for presenting himself in a certain way. So how does he do this, and why does he do this? One, Saul is, when he was picked as a king, there were a group of people who said he doesn't deserve to be a king. He doesn't have what it takes. He's shy, doesn't make decisions, and sure, he is tall, like his head taller than everybody else around him, but that's all he has. So Saul has something to show, something to prove to Israel, that in order to be a king, he needs to be successful as a king. And what people expected from Saul is that he would go right out into the battle and be successful in defending the nation. On this day of the story that is based on, he rides out to fight Philistines, but there was a great defeat. His soldiers were hiding in caves and under the bushes, and some people even left and crossed the border onto other nations to run away from Philistines. And here at this very moment is where Saul reveals his true nature. However, what God really wanted for him was to have his faith rise up from inside of him and trust in the Lord, for the battle truly belongs to God. There's a similar story in 1 Samuel. As you know, and as I preached to you, 1 Samuel begins with a woman, Hannah. And she has same thing as what Saul is experiencing here. Saul is waiting for Samuel to come and to offer a burnt sacrifice. And he was counting on that ritual to gather everyone to himself. He wanted to use that worship to bring people so he can be successful once again. He wanted to use God to bring the army back together so he can be a wonderful, beautiful, praiseworthy king. Because he measured his self-worth by the success of his career. But Samuel did not come. Samuel said, I'll be there in 7 days. And 7 days have come and gone, but he is not there. Saul could not wait any longer. He commands his soldiers, prepare and bring the sacrifice. You may not know this, but only the priest can offer a burnt sacrifice to God. No one else. But Saul, because he needed to be successful, what was inside of him began to ooze out into the nation. The ugly darkness that was inside of him that was unchecked is now coming out. And he offered a sacrifice. And right there, Samuel shows up and says, what have you done? God was going to give you the kingdom to yourself forever and ever. But you have violated, and you have failed, and you have made this about yourself, not about God. Hannah also experienced delay in her life. Every year, as she went to the tabernacle to worship, she would not have a child. And every year, Peninnah, second wife of Elkanah, her husband, she would dress up her kids in the most beautiful, adorable clothes. And they would prance around Hannah, who was barren. And Peninnah made sure that Hannah knew that she is hopeless and she's worthless. Hannah also experienced delay, just in the same way that Saul experienced delay. But Hannah used that experience to reorganize our heart. Instead, Saul, when he experienced delay, his heart became disorganized. And he simply oozed out what was inside of him. Sometimes the ego that we get from our career, from our external things, can really manipulate us. It can really reveal what is inside of us and all the temptations and all the brokenness. But God gave you that delay not to pinpoint all your sins and all your darkness, but to bring healing to that part of your life, to rid of your ego, to remind you that battle belongs to Him. And just wait. Don't make decisions. Don't be rash. Don't be fearful. Wait. I will deliver you. In the same way that when Martha and Mary told Jesus that their brother is sick and you must come right away, and Jesus delays his trip, delays it so much that their brother passes away. But then Jesus says, I have done this to basically reveal something greater, that the Son of Man has power to resurrect. If you and I can wait through the trials and look square on to all the sins and egos that we have, the identity that we put on work, identity that we put on being popular, identity that we put on being well-liked and successful, those things, those false identities, God will get rid of for you if you trust in Him. In Harvard Business Review, Jennifer Wu, who is a CEO and chair of the Lane Crawford Joyce Group in Asia, she said this about our ego that is tied to our career. Managing our ego's craving for fortune, fame, and influence is a prime responsibility of any leader. When we are caught in the grip of ego's craving for more power, we lose control. Ego makes us susceptible to manipulation. It narrows our field of vision, and it corrupts our behavior, often causing us to act against our values. And I think this precisely describes what happened to Saul. As a leader, he let his ego get in the way, and it corrupted his behavior. It narrowed his field of vision, or in this case, he narrowed his scope of faith, and he have become a victim of his own ego. The article continues with this. An inflated ego also corrupts our behavior. When we believe we're the sole architects of our success, we tend to be ruder, more selfish, and more likely to interrupt others. We see clearly the difference between Hannah and how she had dealt with her delays and disappointments, where her identity was not defined by having a baby, but her identity was defined by reorganizing her heart and trusting God again through that trial. But Saul, a powerful king, a beautiful king, could not help himself when he experienced delay. And I think we also experience this kind of thing where we measure our self-worth by the external things, namely our career. We compare ourselves to others. When did you get your job? How much money are you making? Which company hired you? And because of that, we begin to cross the line the same way that Saul has crossed the line. He should not have offered that sacrifice, for that sacrifice belongs to Samuel. That is his job. But we cross the line when we base our identity in our career, and we begin to work overtime after overtime after overtime. We cross that line of overtime, and as a result, our values of putting our family, putting worship, putting our health, all of these things that should be our priority gets deteriorated and desecrated. And we just become a workhorse, a mule, just carry a heavy burden that we have put on ourselves. But here's the thing. Going back to the evil queen, the stepmother of Snow White, she would not have known what was truly in her heart if it wasn't for Snow White and her beauty. She would have, if there was no Snow White, if there was no trial in her life, she would have ended her life as the most beautiful queen of all history. She would have been a monarch, and she would have been wealthy and beautiful, and her life would have ended undisturbed. But I think God sends trials and difficulties into our life to reveal what is inside of us. And these are opportunities that God has given to you to reorganize your heart. What will we do? What will we think as we experience the possibility of another shutdown? What will we do as we face prolonged period of unemployment? What will we feel and how will we judge ourselves in this time when everything is so uncertain? Will we cross the line? Will we do the things that we would never think of doing because there's a delay and there's a disappointment? The good news is that God measures our worth by what is inside of our heart, not by our sacrifice, but by our obedience. What is inside of our heart? And God is reorganizing our heart through these delays and disappointments. Saul wanted to win. He wanted to be victorious. He wanted to get approval. But Hannah simply wanted to reorganize her heart. And she was able to surrender Samuel in the service of God. God helps the weak. God helps the dispossessed and disenfranchised. If that is you today, what I suggest to you is that you wait. Don't make any hasty decisions during this time. Hunker down, pray and pray and pray and say, God, my deepest, the dark stuff in my heart has been revealed. I put identity in career. And I feel like I'm a loser, I'm nobody because I don't have the proper job or I'm not making any money like I should. As you begin to get that surface into your mind, this is time where you pray and ask God to reorganize your heart. This summer, one of my daughters had her birthday. Let me make it even more ambiguous. One of my kids had a birthday. And as a birthday gift, we did a pottery making thingamajiggy day. And I don't know if you know Pastor Angie from Vaughn Church, but I grew up with her. We grew up together. And if I may brag a little bit about our Niagara church, we had, I think, 14 pastors come out of that church. And Pastor Angie is one of them, and she's probably best of all of us. And one of her hobbies is to do pottery. And she brought her spinning wheel, the portable spinning wheel. And Sophia wanted to do this for a long time. And my mind is not sharp as it used to be. And so our whole family had a great fun just in our backyard. And there are two things I take away from that day. One is that in the beginning, when you throw a lump of clay into the middle of the spinning wheel, you can never, ever throw it in the exact center. Even if you did, the moment it impacts the spinning wheel, it warps And what you have to do is, as a potter, you have to squeeze it and bring it back into the exact center. But as we began to do it, the lump of clay became undone. It would jump out of the spinning wheel. And as a masterful potter that she is, she said, that's because you're pressing it too hard, too fast. In order for something, the lump of clay to come into the center, is to do it slowly and bring it closer and closer into the center. And as the pottery gets centered and it gets, the clay gets centered and it begins to take its form as a bowl or vase or whatever it might be, at the end stage, you also have to slow down the wheel, because if it goes too fast, the weakness of the rim will come undone. So powder only goes at the speed in which the clay can handle. And that's where we find ourselves today. The delay is there not because God doesn't care for you. The delay that you're experiencing, the discomfort that you are facing today, is not because God fell asleep. He is going at the speed in which you and I can handle the pressure. He is the one who is sitting down behind the potter's wheel, shaping us as he shapes life. The battle belongs to the Lord. The darkness that you feel and experience, you must say, this belongs to God. My future, my security belongs to God. And what I give to you today is not my six-figure salary. It's not my resume. It's not my salary or the fact that I have wonderful skills and acceptance in my workplace. What I give to you today, God, is the darkness of my heart and my obedience to you. The grace in this story is that God is not saying to Saul, you must win every victory, 10 victories per month in order for you to be accepted. No. What God wants from Saul, the rightful king, is for him to say, I am no one. The battle belongs to you. You use me for your battles. God will not give you what you cannot handle. If you trust in him, he will mold you, shape you at the speed in which you can handle. And let's go at it slowly. Let's go at it slowly, for that's how transformation happens. It doesn't happen quickly, but happens through multiple, prolonged period of potter coming to see which part of the clay is too thick and which part of the clay is too weak. There are delays in our life, and you will experience them. But be thankful, because if you don't have delays and disappointments, you will end your life as an evil monarch who have never realized how dark he or she is on the inside. We must thank God for our discomforts, the things that we experience that we do not want to experience. For that is how God brings real transformation through Christ. God does not measure your worth by what you do in life, or what career you have, and how good of a chef you are, or how tall you are, or how skinny or how heavy you are. But God measures your worth by what is in your heart. And he wants all of it, all the darkness, all the goods. Ultimately, what he does for us is that he inserts Christ into our heart, that he is a true command center of our life, that he is a true king who sacrificed himself so that we would have life. Let us trust in this king. Let us trust that if God can redeem the tragedy of Jesus on the cross, and he exalted him from his humiliation, then let us trust God that today we feel humiliated and we feel sad and we feel torn. And God is not saying don't feel those things. God is okay But let us say, I trust that the battle belongs to you, and you will exalt me in your own way, in your own time. God, thank you for measuring my self-worth by what is inside of me, and that is Jesus Christ. Thank you for loving me and caring for me, not for what I do and not for what I have, but the way that you have transformed my heart through Christ. Isn't that what even Harvard Business Review have figured out? Isn't that what secular CEO have figured out? That it's not what you have, it's not what you do, but it is what's inside of you. I encourage you, brothers and sisters, two things. One, let us continue to pray and reveal all the darkness that we have, everything in our heart to God in prayer. Keep coming to God in prayer. And just keep talking to Him, relating to Him. And two, when you feel like you have to make a hasty decision, will you just stop for a moment and go back to your prayer? Don't make any hasty decisions, because you will miss the opportunity to be shaped by Him if you spin too fast.